If we're honest, we might see that a lot of the stress in our lives is voluntary, and we don't have to agree to it. Think about what is stressing you in your environment and how you can take control to moderate or remove it entirely. Consider someone who hates how busy the grocery stores are on Saturday morning. Knowing that this stresses them out, they can rearrange their schedule so they do their weekly shopping at the quietest time, say on a Tuesday evening. There's no need to manage the stress of a busy supermarket if you just avoid it entirely. You can avoid stressful people in exactly the same way. Do you find that your stress goes through the roof when your parents come to stay for the holidays? Find a way to have them stay in a nearby B&B, or avoid planning any activities where you are all alone together in a room for hours with nothing to do but stress each other out. When you avoid stress, you're not running away from obligations or denying genuine problems. You're simply learning to say no to stress that is unnecessary and harmful. We can always say no to situations and people that demand too much of us and our resources. Those resources can be mental energy and attention, but they can also be time. If something in your life is gobbling up all your time, you can say no. Look at your to-do list and get rid of the 2 or 3 items that are not urgent and not your priority. Delegate tasks, or let someone else take on responsibility. You don't have to do it all. So, the next time you face a stressful prospect, ask yourself, can I just avoid this whole thing? If you can, do it. If you can't, you might need to find ways to change the situation, i.e., alter it. You always have the option of asking others to change their behavior. For example, if the builders are making a racket outside, politely ask them to pause for 10 minutes while you finish an important phone call. Communicate your needs and feelings directly rather than suffering in silence. If you never clearly tell your friend that his stupid jokes really hurt you, you may sit quietly and bear the brunt of it forever, when it would have been easy to tell him how you feel and ask him to stop. We can't avoid every stress in life, but we often have a say in how these events unfold. Talk to people, negotiate, and use I statements to share your needs and ask for what you want. If you can't help but go to the store on Saturday morning, play your audiobook on your phone and listen to it while you shop, if it relaxes you. If you can't avoid that extra PTA meeting, try to lump it in with other errands you're already doing, so you save time, effort, and potentially gas for your car. You can also do a lot to alter unavoidable situations by cutting them down to a more manageable size. If you can't get out of going to that boring party, go, but be upfront in the beginning and say, unfortunately, I have to go in an hour. Early start tomorrow. If you can't avoid a stressor, ask what you can do to change it. If your answer is not much, then you might need to go one step further and accept it. How do you accept a situation you dislike? Firstly, if you dislike it, then you dislike it. Acceptance doesn't mean pretending you don't feel how you feel. It's an acknowledgement that it's okay to feel that way. Validate your own emotions and own them. For example, your boyfriend has just broken up with you via text, and there's not much you can do about his decision. But you can work on accepting the situation by calling up a friend to share your feelings. If the situation is one in which you've been wronged, acceptance may take the form of trying to find a way to forgive. Remember that forgiveness is something you do for yourself and not the other person. When you forgive, you're releasing yourself from the stress and energy of resenting and blaming the other person. Acceptance may also be about the subtle shifts in the way we frame events. We can't change the events themselves, but we can watch how we talk about them inwardly and the language we use. For example, instead of saying, I completely failed my course and I wasted my money, I'm such an idiot for not working harder, you could say, I made a mistake. I'm not happy about it, but this one event doesn't define me. I can learn from mistakes and move on. I can do better next time. Acceptance doesn't mean we agree with what happened or that we like it and shouldn't try to change it. It only means that we gracefully come to terms with what we can't realistically change so we can focus on what we can. In the longer term, we do our best in the face of stress if we can adapt. Adapting means making more lasting changes to our worldview, our goals, our perception, and expectations. Picture someone who is a perfectionist and is always stressed out because they never seem to meet their high expectations. The best approach isn't that they find a way to be Superman, but instead lower their expectations so they're more reasonable and in line with reality. Adapting to stress means we change ourselves to better cope with life. You might simply refuse to engage in depressing thoughts and deliberately practice being a person who's more optimistic. When we alter our perspective, we can see things differently. Is this a crisis or a challenge? How does this obstacle look when we tell ourselves, I'm a resilient person, compared to when we tell ourselves, life isn't fair, this will end badly like everything does? When we adapt to stress, we find ways to make ourselves stronger. We build a worldview for ourselves that empowers us. For example, someone might get into the habit of making a gratitude list every day of all the wonderful things they are actually blessed with in life. Another person might meditate on their own personal code or say a mantra daily to remind them that they are strong and they can get through adversity. If we have an arsenal of powerful attitudes, ideas, philosophies, and inspiration, we can go into the world knowing that we can handle stress and maybe even be better people for it. So, those are the 4 A's of stress management. When you find yourself feeling anxious, pause and run through each of them in sequence. No matter how stressful the situation, there is a way for you to engage with it mindfully and proactively. You're not helpless in the face of stress. You have tools at your disposal. To use these tools, all it takes is a little awareness. For example, there may be a colleague at work who stresses you out daily. Instead of getting overwhelmed by telling yourself there's nothing you can do about it, pause and ask if you can simply avoid this colleague. Maybe you can have lunch at a different time to avoid meeting them in the cafeteria. Or maybe you can physically move to work farther away from them. But let's say you can't avoid encountering them in weekly meetings, and this is where they frequently interrupt you or steal your ideas. You think of ways to alter the situation. Can you get out of these meetings? Can you speak to your colleague privately and share your concerns? I'm uncomfortable in meetings lately, and I feel dismissed when you interrupt me. Can you speak up in meetings and assert a stronger boundary when you talk? If none of these are really possible, you can still accept the situation to some degree. You might confide in a close friend about your frustrations, or come to realize that this colleague actually interrupts everyone, so you won't continue to take it personally or let it stress you. Finally, you can adapt by working on becoming an overall more confident and assertive person. When you genuinely feel that you have as much right to speak as anyone else, then you may feel more confident saying, "Sorry, I was still speaking," and carrying on calmly. This has been Stop Overthinking: 23 Techniques to Relieve Stress, Stop Negative Spirals, Declutter Your Mind, and Focus on the Present. Written by Nick Trenton, narrated by Russell Newton. Copyright 2021 by Nick Trenton. Production copyright by Nick Trenton.